All right, let's jump right into this explainer and play plant detective for a bit. You know the feeling, right? You spend hours out there babying your veggies or landscape plants and boom, heartbreak. One day, everything is vibrant and green, and literally the next day, something is terribly wrong. Well, today, we're going to figure out exactly why our gardens sometimes fail. We'll be focusing our magnifying glass on a particularly notorious culprit known as southern blight, and we're going to learn how to decode the clues your plants are leaving behind right there in the soil. It is so incredibly frustrating when your thriving plants just suddenly start dropping leaves, wilting, or turning strange colors. And I get it, your first instinct might be to totally panic, grab the watering can, or just run to the hardware store for some generic chemical spray. But hold on a second. Instead of guessing or just assuming we know what's happening, we need to treat the garden like a crime scene. We need to investigate. Every single spot, every droop, every discoloration, that's a piece of evidence. Because if we act without actually identifying the problem, we might not just fail to save the plant, we could actually make the whole situation worse. So here's an absolutely crucial takeaway from our sources, especially from agricultural extension experts. Let the symptoms lead you to the diagnosis, not the other way around. It's kind of like a giant puzzle. Multiple different problems can actually have very similar symptoms. If you walk into your garden already convinced that your plants have a specific fungus, you're probably going to subconsciously ignore all the clues pointing to something entirely different, like, say, a lack of water or a nutrient deficiency. We really have to remain objective and just let the plant tell us its story. Now, before we jump to the conclusion that we've got an infectious disease on our hands, the sources make this really fascinating distinction between two major categories of plant damage: biotic and abiotic factors. On the biotic side, we're talking about living organisms. These are your fungi, bacteria, viruses, and insects that are actively attacking the plant. But on the abiotic side, that's all the non-living environmental stressors. We're talking severe drought, poor soil drainage, a random frost, or even just physical damage from your lawnmower. Abiotic issues don't spread from plant to plant like a cold, but they cause massive stress. So always rule out the non-living, abiotic causes first. They're usually way easier to correct. Okay, so let's say we do figure out the problem is a living pathogen. We have to understand how it got its foot in the door. Infectious plant diseases don't just happen by pure chance. They absolutely depend on conditions being perfect to strike. Plant pathologists use this brilliantly simple diagnostic tool to explain this, called the disease triangle. It basically outlines the exact motive and opportunity a disease needs to take down your garden. For any infectious disease to take hold and spread, you need all three sides of this triangle existing at the exact same time. First up, a susceptible host. That's a vulnerable plant, maybe stressed out by poor weather. Second, the pathogen itself, the specific fungus or bug, literally has to be present in the area. And third, you need a favorable environment. Think high humidity, super soggy soil, or plants crowded way too close together. If even one of these three factors is missing, the disease simply cannot develop. It's a real game changer when you realize you have the power to break that triangle. All right, Section 1. Gathering the clues by identifying symptoms. Let's see what physical signs our plants are leaving for us. When you see a branch with a sunken, discolored, totally dead area on it, you're looking at a canker. A canker happens when a part of the plant's bark or stem just stops growing and dies off, while the healthy tissue around it tries to keep going. More often than not, these start from some sort of physical wound on the plant, where a pathogen found a really easy doorway to get inside.
Now this next comparison brilliantly clears up something that trips up a lot of gardeners: the difference between chlorosis and scorch. Chlorosis is a general yellowing or whitening of plant tissue that really should be green. It usually points to a nutrient deficiency. But scorch is completely different. With scorch, the browning happens along the outer edges of the leaf and moves inward. That typically means the plant just isn't getting enough water all the way to the ends of its leaves, which could be drought or a pathogen literally clogging up the plant's internal plumbing.
And then there's wilt. We've all seen this one, right? The leaves just look entirely limp and sad. This happens when the plant loses its internal turgor pressure, which is basically the water pressure inside the cells keeping everything rigid. Sure, wilt happens if you forget to water, but it can also happen if a fungal disease has completely rotted the roots away, meaning the plant can't drink even if it's sitting in a puddle.
Moving on to Section 2, the prime suspect profile. It is time to track down a highly aggressive fungal disease known as southern blight.
The actual scientific name for our culprit is Sclerotium rolfsi. It's a highly destructive fungal pathogen that causes southern blight across a massive range of plants, from your vegetable garden to your ornamental shrubs.
It attacks roots, stems, crowns, and any fruits touching the soil. It is an absolute master at exploiting the disease triangle, especially thriving when things get warm, humid, and overcrowded.
So what is the ultimate calling card for southern blight? If you look right down at the base of the plant stem, you might spot these tiny, tan, round little balls that look exactly like mustard seeds. Those are called sclerotia. It's literally the fungus actively growing and reproducing right there on the plant. If you see these little mustard seed things, usually along with some white cobweb-looking fungal growth near the dirt, you have positively identified southern blight.
The timeline on this crime is shockingly fast. The initial infection gives the lower leaves and stems this mushy, water-soaked look. Within just a few days of that, the plant will rapidly turn yellow and completely wilt as the roots just rot away. And the scariest part? It spreads like wildfire. Those little sclerotia seeds can hitch a ride on infected soil, lingering plant debris, splashing irrigation water, or even just your favorite gardening trowel if you don't clean it between plants.
That brings us to Section 3, solving the case with integrated pest management. Let's talk about how to actually stop this thing.
Instead of blindly grabbing harsh chemicals at the very first sign of trouble, modern plant diagnostics rely on integrated pest management, or IPM. It's a holistic, ecosystem-based approach. Rather than just temporarily blasting a pest, it looks at long-term ecological impact. It combines cultural practices, environmental tweaks, and targeted controls to completely disrupt that disease triangle we talked about.
Let's break down how we literally dismantle the disease triangle step by step. Step 1 is host selection. Pick plant varieties that are naturally tough or resistant to local diseases. Boom! You've removed the susceptible host. Step 2 is cultural management. Honestly, probably the most important one. Space your plants out so they get good airflow and water the soil, not the leaves. That kills the favorable environment. Step 3 is biological management, like adding beneficial bacteria to your soil to outcompete the bad guys. And finally, Step 4 is chemical management, used strictly as a targeted preventative measure, not a magic cure.
With a devastating pathogen like southern blight, prevention is absolutely everything. Because once it takes hold and those sclerotia are established in your soil, getting rid of it is incredibly tough. You have to be so careful not to nick or injure the roots of your plants with your tools, because those wounds are open doors. Now, if you do get a confirmed outbreak, our sources recommend an amazing technique called soil solarization. You basically tightly cover the infected soil with clear plastic and let the blazing summer sun bake the dirt for a few weeks. It naturally heats up and kills the fungal spores hiding in there. After that, you just mix in some good compost to bring the soil back to life.
You know, a healthy garden isn't a garden with zero problems. It's a garden managed by an observant caretaker. So the next time a plant starts to look a little sad, resist the urge to just guess. Think about the disease triangle, check for abiotic stress versus living pathogens, and hunt for that physical evidence. Next time you step outside into your yard, I want you to look closely and ask yourself, what secret story is your garden trying to tell you, and are you paying close enough attention to hear it? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy investigating.